I strongly agree to that, ma'am. So I would like you to share if you have ever have helped in any of the rescues of a victim. How your experience have been? What are the basic things that you have observed while conducting a rescue operation? If you can share that with the audience, please.
Unfortunately, I have not yet had an opportunity to be involved directly with the rescue. But I believe, as I've said earlier, there are power in our words. And if you notice, I said not yet. There are some amazing organizations around the world, especially in the United States. One of them is called OUR. This organization does amazing work. They do involve themselves in rescues. International Justice Mission, which is a Christian organization, have bases in India and throughout the world. They also engage in rescues. My dream and desire is to one day work for an organization like International Justice Mission or OUR. I desire to do more than educate and empower people through my talks, through presentations. My dream and desire is to build safe houses in India and the Philippines. My desire is to do so much more than I'm doing now, because talking and educating can only go so far. I understand that when it comes to rescues, there is a procedure that must be put in place to safeguard that individual and to build the necessary court case so that that trafficker or pimp can be incarcerated. If I saw a victim of human trafficking, it is not my place to engage in trying to rescue them, because in doing so, I can intervene in what may have been an active investigation. I heard of an instance of a guy who tried to rescue a woman from out of a brothel. He had no idea he was intervening in a sting. The sting operation was then ruined because he had done that. And if I remember correctly, when the sting operation then had to fast track, that victim survivor was no longer there. We also have to understand, when we involve ourselves and we are not police personnel, that victim survivor often ends up suffering at the hands of the exploiter, because that pimp or trafficker believes that that individual is in the know. We have an obligation to allow the police to do their job. In New York, there are signboards in train stations around the United States. You'll see signboards, train, bus stations. If you see something, say something. It doesn't say, if you see something, get involved. And that is in relation to bombs. If you see something that you believe may be a bomb, say something. It doesn't say, if you see something, touch the bag. We have an obligation to say something if we have suspicions. Don't say 10 years later, a month later, oh, I thought that was. That's too late. Any one of us could be exploited. We have an obligation to safeguard and protect one another. In the Bible, it says we've got to be our brother's keeper. Who is our brother? It's the person next door, the person on the bus, the person on the train. If we were trafficked, God forbid, we would want our neighbor who was seeing us being labor trafficked to intervene. We would not want the labor to speak 5 years later to the newspaper and say, I did think that person was being trafficked, but I wasn't sure. We would want them to allow the police to investigate, allow the police to do their job. And in doing so, if there is no trafficking, at least the police investigated it. If there was trafficking, that person would be rescued. So as I said, I've not yet had the opportunity to do so, but I desire that one day I can be more proactively involved in helping to rescue. But my desire is to provide safe houses for victims and survivors for when they are indeed rescued.
Thank you so much for that, ma'am. Another related question to this, that what you have said right now, that how the community, how the people, the general people who don't know that much of about trafficking and everything, but how can they help in eradicating this problem to an extent? What can be their input to it?
I would say that we need to start communicating with one another. We need to interact more than we have been. Yes, there may be a lockdown. Yes, there may have been a virus. Yes, things are changing. We need to communicate. As I've said in interviews before, you need to be in your children's business. If you have children of your own, if there are children in your world, talk to them. Interact. A lot of relationships break down because of communication. A lot of domestic violence takes place right in front of our faces, but we don't realize. We observe certain signs in relationships of friends or family members, but we don't explore that. We don't call out that husband or their wife and ask them, why are you talking to your spouse like that? We need to care more. Instead of saying, it's not my business, I'm not getting involved, ask questions. Ensure that it's a confidential space. If you're concerned of domestic violence, talk to that woman, talk to that man privately, ask exploratory questions, do not judge. If you believe a child is being exploited, ask them questions. As we say as lawyers, do not lead the witness, ask open questions so you can understand. When I talk to my clients sometimes, I ask them, oh, is that your boyfriend on the phone? No, I don't have a boyfriend. As a lawyer, we know how to elicit the truth from a people. We know how to get an honest response. And I would encourage you, regardless of your profession, it is not always about what a person says with their mouth, it is about what they say with their body language. When I listen to people, I listen more to what they're saying with their actions than what is coming out of their mouth. There was a child I spoke to once, and I asked her, why are you having sex with your boyfriend? And she said to me, I'm not. And I believed her. The way she responded, not necessarily the words, her reaction. Even recently, I asked a family member, why did you do this? And they responded very, very angrily, completely denied. And it was almost like they had a high blood pressure right then and there. It wasn't so much the words, it was the reaction. They were incensed. And I know that there are people who are good actors and actresses, but as lawyers, we ask the question as though we know. In other words, it's like a false allegation. So for example, Monica, why were you in, let's say, Mumbai last week when you're on lockdown? Now you would respond to me in complete honesty because you were not there. And not just your words, but your actions, the way that you communicate, that would demonstrate to me if you're telling the truth or not. We have to look around. If we see that there's a young girl next door who cooks and cleans for our neighbor, we need to talk to that young girl. Not just talk to the neighbors, talk to the young girl, ask questions. But remember, we're exploring. We're not going around trying to create trafficking situations where there is none. We're not trying to create false allegations. That's not the purpose. But it's about communicating. Learn about the signs. Look out for red flags. What we need to understand also is sex trafficking of girls. Quite often, when a girl is sexually exploited or ends up in prostitution, she was a victim of sexual abuse quite often as a child. Usually around 4 or 5, a young girl or boy is sexually abused. When they turn 10, they may be sexually abused again. When they turn 16, in a culture like the UK, in their romantic relationship, they may start to have sex together. When they turn 18, they may say, you know what, my boyfriend broke my heart, I was abused multiple times, I'm going to sell my body, I'm going to empower myself. There are women and girls who sometimes, because of abuse, flip the switch and end up in trafficking because they end up finding themselves a pimp who exploits them, end up in prostitution, sometimes get kidnapped and trafficked. At the end of the day, in my opinion, prostitution is never a job, it is never sex work, it is never an occupation. It is often where a person has been exploited throughout their lives and feels they're empowering themselves, or they are there because they happen to be there. We have to understand everything has a root. Trees have roots. We as people, the way we behave, our conduct, our income, there is the root cause for everything. You need to understand what is the root of a person's behavior. What is the root because of this? When you talk to a person, look beneath the surface, look at what they're saying, look at how they're behaving, and ask questions. Do your research. You may not understand human trafficking, but you can go on the internet and you can look up the red flags. If a child has been sexually abused in a young age and they've been sexually abused again, they may have low self-esteem, low self-worth. I myself was indeed a victim of childhood sexual abuse from 4 to 10 by my mother's first husband. By the grace of God, I have not been sexually exploited multiple times by multiple human beings, but I have been abused in various circumstances, physically, mentally, by other individuals. I'm a strong Christian and I have very strong values about sex after marriage. But despite my strong values, I have had men who've tried to pursue me for marriage, tried to exploit me, tried to take advantage of me. As a result of being a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, that makes me vulnerable to sex trafficking. Every one of us has vulnerabilities. I'm an only child, that makes me vulnerable. When I go abroad and do not speak the language, that makes me vulnerable. If I'm unemployed, do not have money, I'm homeless, that makes me vulnerable. Traffickers and pimps take advantage of vulnerabilities. Every one of us has vulnerability. If you leave from India and you go to another country and do not speak the language, even if you are wealthy in India, even if you came from a prestigious family and background, you are vulnerable because you do not speak the language. When you are lost and someone speaks your native tongue and directs you, you are vulnerable because you are trusting that person. So we need to understand vulnerabilities enables exploitation to take place. Try and identify vulnerabilities in yourself and in others so you can help to protect and safeguard the people in your world.
Right. So, ma'am, when it comes to India, especially, over a period of time, we have heard about it that let us just, legalize prostitution. There are section of society who says that if we legalize this, so there will be no trafficking, or in a way we can deal with the issue. Do you think legalizing prostitution can actually benefit in any way, or actually can help in eradication to an extent trafficking? Because as you said, that prostitution or trafficking for sex is just a type. There are other types also. So focusing on the sexual exploitation of a person, do you think that the prostitution, if we legalize prostitution, it can help in any way?
I strongly disagree with legalization of prostitution. And why is that? Because what people don't realize, when prostitution becomes legalized, like in a place like Germany, human trafficking increases because men want to have sex with boys and girls. Men want to perpetrate sexual activity on the defenseless. There are individuals who will go to a prostitute, go to a brothel, go to a gentleman's club, engage in brutal sexual activity with that woman, and then a few days or weeks later, that very same man is seen on the TV, on the news, having raped a stranger. In my opinion, is never a job. We may sit there and say that it is a form of work, that it is an honest living. I disagree with that. Of all the occupations that exist in the world, prostitution requires a minimum age of entry, 18 in most countries. When I started work, I was 15 and began waitressing. I was too young to begin prostitution because I was 15. Age of entry is 18 for prostitution. With prostitution, it often requires that woman or man who is selling their body to be drunk, to be under the influence of drugs or alcohol for them to engage in this activity. How many occupations require human beings to make themselves inebriated, intoxicated, to make them have to shoot up in advance of performing their duties? I strongly do not believe prostitution is a job. In fact, in the United States, statistics show 90% of prostituted women were sexually abused as a child. When I heard that statistics, I believe that prostitution chose them and not the other way around. However, if we do believe prostitution is a job, then that makes the bedroom the workplace and the bed the workstation. How is a bedroom a workplace for any man or woman on this earth? And how is the bed the workstation? I don't believe prostitution is a job, but if it is, the man is the customer. But then what does it make the woman? The product? I don't believe he's a customer. I believe it is paid rape, and he is a rapist. Every time that these men and women are sold into sex, they are brutalized, sometimes kidnapped, often raped, and sometimes murdered. Even recently, I read an organization in the UK that provides alerts to prostitutes and provides alerts working with prostitutes, and of an individual who often solicits women for sexual activities with a knife, and on the same day of me receiving that alert, the second alert says that this man had murdered or alleged to have murdered one of these prostitutes. We need to understand prostitution is training ground for rape. These men practice. We have rape robots. With AI technology, you can now purchase a sex doll or a sex robot. You can now marry your robots and have children with your robots. The issue of sex doll robots and child sex doll robots is that these men will practice on the robot and then eventually go on to perpetrate that against another human being. In Amsterdam, we have women who are in these pop-up shops. They stand behind glass windows and perform sexual activities with customers in a back room. These women may look happy, may smile, but that's what they need to do to get a customer. Yes, there is a panic button inside that room, but let's be realistic. By the time she presses the panic button, the attack has already taken place. And if she continues to press that panic button, she will lose her so-called job. We have to understand that this is an underground industry, and the statistics have shown very clearly that when prostitution becomes legal, trafficking is on the increase. We have women who are trafficked from, let's say, Russia and brought into the Netherlands, trafficked from, let's say, Eastern European and brought into Germany. It's like money laundering. Money laundering is taking dirty money and making it clean. You take that money, you send it to a person who then takes that money and puts it into their bank account. Their bank account is clean. The dirty money was wired to them and made clean in their bank account. What about when you have a woman who is trafficked from Eastern Europe, trafficked from Asia, brought into Germany in a legal brothel? That is laundering. You have taken what was a crime of exploitation, and now it's under the guise of legality. That is not the way. And what you have to understand, because these women not want to say that they are a prostitute, they may not want to tell the government, I'm a prostitute, give me an ID card as a prostitute. It makes more prostitutes go underground. If I was a prostitute, I personally would not want to go to the government and say, give me an ID card as a prostitute, because one day I may eventually leave there and be able to make an honest, clean living. Therefore, I feel it is inappropriate for us to expect these women to want to get an ID card and to say this ID card protects them, because the reality is, if I'm not comfortable about calling myself a prostitute, if I'm not comfortable about actually being labeled as a prostitute, because I need to continue to make money to feed myself or my family, I would have to sell my body underground, which puts me more at risk of STDs, unwanted pregnancies, of exploitation.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I personally do believe that legalizing this thing will increase it rather, curbing the problem or curbing the issue for that matter. Thank you so much. I think we can go for us regarding the discussion, and time can be no limit for us when it comes to trafficking, because the matter is so huge, and it is, I would say, that is not talked about, much talked about. It is not so much talked about. So thank you for sharing your valuable time with us. I know you were stuck and you were busy with the things, but you still managed. I seriously, sincerely thank you for that, ma'am. And obviously, the last time when I met you was in person, and I want you to believe this, but yes, I was very delighted and excited when I met you last time. And today itself also, I was very excited. I remember I texted you also. I'm very excited to meet you. If this it wouldn't have been the COVID situation, definitely we would have you in campus in person, and sharing your thoughts and the great work that you're doing with our students and our fellow mates. Hopefully soon the situations will be okay, and we will definitely have you with us, sharing your more thoughts and everything. I take this immense pleasure again to, on behalf of Shoolini University, to thank you so much for giving us time and being the part of our knowledge sharing sessions. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad we got the opportunity to do this today. Unfortunately, in life, there are so many variables. My circumstances has subsequently changed within the last 24 hours, but I'm glad we were still able to do this. I think it's an awesome opportunity to share, because it's all about educating others. And of course, as you know, I do have a book which is called Can You Keep a Secret?
Yes,
If people are interested in finding out more about the work that I do, they can visit my website, which is changingcases.org. That's changingcases.org. My Facebook name is Changing Cases. My website, again, changingcases.org. I would love to come back to India to share. I still have another year on my visa. I was even looking up on the internet whether the lockdown has ceased in India. Unfortunately, they're not allowing our entry in, otherwise I'd be on a flight there very soon. I would certainly be privileged and honored to come and share again. And of course, when things do change, I look forward to meeting you again to share, because this is an important message. And of course, if there's other opportunities for me to share anywhere throughout India, whether in person or virtually, please do let me know. It is an important message. I absolutely love what I do. It is my dream to do this kind of thing full time, to speak around the world, educating people on what is a very important topic that affects every single one of us. So once again, my website, changingcases.org, and my Facebook, Changing, CASES, Changing Cases. Thank you so much for having me again today and for being so flexible.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.